Hello, welcome to this download edition of World Business Report's Wall Street Update. This is Fergus Nicol on Tuesday, the 21st of November. And in the programme, what next for Zimbabwe in a post-Mugabe era? Will anything actually change?
It's the end of an individual rather than of a system. And I think we need, as we celebrate, we need to be quite cautious.
We're here to talk about the economy, so what's the first thing that needs fixing?
The only thing that we need now is to unlock capital from anywhere in the world. You get capital in, you expand, you do whatever you want, you produce.
And in other news, look out Silicon Valley. Chinese tech companies are making some serious moves.
There is real innovation happening within companies like Tencent and Alibaba. They're now pushing into areas not just in China, but outside in Southeast Asia and in India, where they're coming head to head with the Silicon Valley-based companies.
Welcome, this is World Business Report. We start today with the celebrations in the Zimbabwean capital, Harare. This minutes after the Speaker of Parliament announced the resignation of Robert Mugabe as president.
I'm very, very happy that Zimbabwe is now back to the people. Back to the people! Zimbabwe!
We are very happy that Zimbabwe now, this is our independence. It is our independence. Mugabe is now officially resigned. He's no more right now. And I'm very happy. I'm a Zimbabwean citizen. And I'm very happy. Viva Zimbabwe! Viva!
We are now free! Totally free!
Well, Mr. Mugabe is due to be replaced by the man he sacked as vice president, Emmerson Mnangagwa. But he's not the only one who's got his eyes on the top job. Dr. Nkosana Moyo is a former industry minister. He is not a member of the ruling ZANU-PF, and he aims to run in the next elections as the candidate of the Alliance for People's Agenda. He's been talking to my colleague, Mike Johnson.
Well, my reaction is that, like most Zimbabweans, we feel that this is the end of almost like a nightmare, a bad dream. But at the same time, I personally am quite cautious, and the other Zimbabweans, I think, have made note of this particular issue. It's the end of an individual rather than of a system. And I think we need, as we celebrate, we need to be quite cautious and be careful to distinguish this issue of a system from an individual. And so we need to stay vigilant and actually think through quite carefully what has brought us up to this point and work towards making sure that we don't continue the same way, because the system itself needs to change.
I was going to ask you, is this a new dawn for Zimbabwe and its economy? From what you've just said, the answer to that is, it might not be.
I think that's exactly it. It might not be, but also the flip side is that there are other examples where, in fact, somebody comes out of an old repressive system and totally changes it. And I mean, as an example, we've got somebody like Gorbachev in Russia, remember? So I think the fact that somebody comes out of a rotten system does not necessarily mean they are incapable of a new dawn or spearheading a new dawn. But I just want us to be cognizant of the fact that as we stand today, we have participated in seeing the outcome of an internal fight within ZANU. And that internal fight, to be honest with you, had nothing to do with the interests of Zimbabweans as a whole.
What is it about the Zimbabwean system then that needs to change now?
At the core of Zimbabwe's problems is the fact that we don't seem to appreciate that the contestation of ideas, it's like what competition is to an economy. So contestation of ideas in terms of governance helps you refine your thought processes because of the challenges that you get. And that also allows us to appreciate loyal opposition, which in turn should lead to an appreciation of free and fair elections. You have to have an appreciation that the act of investing is a choice. It's a choice from amongst options that are available. For instance, if somebody wants to look at investing in Zimbabwe, they will ask themselves a very simple question. Why is Zimbabwe not South Africa, and not Mozambique, and not Tanzania, and not Zambia?
And what do you think Robert Mugabe's economic legacy will be?
I think, unfortunately, the latter part, maybe the latter 2/3 of his tenure are littered with things that went wrong, to the extent that what he did right at the beginning is likely to be lost. But if one were to be fair in assessing what Robert should stand for, it would be good to recognize that at the beginning of our independence, he got a couple of things right. He got, in fact, the education policy and the health policies for this country to be right. Even the investment policies were not too bad before we hit the issue of land redistribution, which was done so badly.
Well, we're going to get more detail on those points. Land distribution still to come. Talk a bit more about the national economy as well. I've been hearing from Kenneth Ndlovu. He is a Harare-based economist. But we talked first, of course, about what's already been quite a turbulent week.
I'm just so ecstatic, man. I'm really happy about what happened today. It's really a historic moment for us. So everyone just celebrating a new era that's coming.
How would you describe that new era? Because we have the same ruling party, the same parliament. The new president is the old vice president. What's changed apart from one man?
The problem with Mugabe, that is like a stumbling block that's just standing on the door, just blocking everything else that's trying to come into our country. So that's the only difference. Of course, his party's been busy doing horrible things, everyone else. But now we're talking of people, a lot of people who were in ZANU-PF, but those people also had kids who were in school, their relatives were suffering, and they're also going through the sufferings that everyone was going through. But they couldn't say anything now because Mugabe was a very brutal person, planting the security agents everywhere, so that if anyone says anything else, they'll be very quick to pick it up and then they punish you.
Right. In terms of the economy, Mr. Ndlovu, what fixes need most urgently to be put in place?
The only thing that we need now is to unlock capital from anywhere in the world. You get capital in, you expand, you do whatever you want, you produce, you pay your workers, after you pay your workers, in the end, they also buy things and all that, and then the economy expands. That's how the GDP grows, actually. Really, nowadays, the world is so much connected, international trade, e-commerce and all that. So you can't always live like in a vacuum, just like what our president wanted to do.
So internal investment, in terms of what that's spent on once the wealth starts to reach the people who need it, what is most needed? Is it infrastructure? Is it schools? Is it roads?
Our infrastructure is really bad in terms of the road network and the industries themselves. But now the good thing about industries is just most of them have been lying dormant for quite some time. So it's just a matter of reviving them, buying new equipment in there. So at least you might have a shorter turnaround time than someone who's going to be building from scratch. And then our roads are really in a bad state. You can't really go to most rural areas now because we had a cyclone last year that did damage a lot of roads.
At the moment, the US dollar is worth around 400,000 Zimbabwean dollars. What can be done about the currency?
Of course, they're rating the US dollar against the Zimbabwean dollar. But now, since 2009, we did adopt the multi-currency regime where we're using the US dollars, British pounds, South African rands, and so forth. I'm thinking that we can do the full dollarization. But now, if we want to go that way, I'm just thinking our country should really join the Rand Monetary Union, whereby we can just join our neighbors, South Africa, Lesotho, and Namibia and Swaziland, in just using the South African Rand. That would be quite advantageous for our economy.
One of the headline grabbers of the Mugabe era, abroad at least, was the appropriation of white-owned farms and the departure from the country of a lot of farmers. I'm assuming that is history that's irreversible now, or could you see farmers coming back to the Zimbabwean countryside?
The incoming president, there's an understanding generally that he's going to bring back some of the white farmers that ran away from Mugabe, just to try and maintain the peace and also the environment that's workable, across the divide. So we're just thinking he's going to bring the farmers back and make them work properly here, and also boost our agricultural system. So we're quite positive that he's going to bring back the farmers.
Thanks to Kenneth Ndlovu speaking to us from Harare. In the United States, the S&P 500 passed the 2,600 mark on Tuesday, another one of those round number milestones that we seem to be checking off this year with some regularity. Joe Saluzzi is partner and co-founder at Themis Trading in New Jersey.
It's one of those markets, they say a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's what's been going on here. And a lot of these stocks they're on the move, and sometimes there's no particular reason, but it is a strong market. People are anticipating growth still. They're anticipating that the tax cuts will help corporations, for the bottom line right there, which will raise PE ratios and which will make stocks look more attractive. And that's the theory. But if anything if there's any monkey wrench in that, if any sort of setback, it's going to be a fast and furious downtick. But right now, it's all systems go.
I want to switch tracks, Joe, and talk about an alternative market, and that is in cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, Ethereum, there are others besides, and you're looking at some fairly serious investments being proposed in the US.
Yeah, it has captured the attention of the Wall Street crowd, which I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad, because the crypto crowd seems to be on their own track, let's just say. When Wall Street gets involved, they tend to screw things up. And I think that's if I was a cryptocurrency, purist, let's just say, I'd be very concerned right now about how Wall Street's getting involved. And not only are Wall Street investors putting money into it, but now they're trying to create derivative products like futures and options around Bitcoin. And it really is starting to get dangerous. And I think, the biggest concern that I have about it is that the Bitcoin market is unregulated. There are exchanges around the world, and there's always news, and there was just one yesterday about a hack and a theft, and there's always millions of dollars being stolen from accounts and so on. Unless you have regulation on the underlying currency or the underlying market, whatever it may be, how can you have a derivative market? And I think that a big problem here is that if they do put a derivative like a future on, you're setting up for a disaster, because people are going to put these things in their portfolios, and they may even have an ETF soon, and they're not going to know how they're priced. They're not going to know how they're valued. No, if someone says to you, it's trading at 8,000 now, and I think it's going to 10,000, and I'd say, why? What is your reason? How are you possibly valuing this thing? No one really knows why it's trading at what it's doing. It's more of a gambling instrument.
That's Joe Saluzzi with Themis Trading in New Jersey.